Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited today because we're going to be talking with a serial entrepreneur who, holy cow, I can't even believe he's got time to be talking to us. But he is so inspirational in how he proceeds with business and, more importantly, with life. And we're going to have a great discussion today. So please join me in welcoming Adam Hergenrother to our program today. Welcome, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, Deb, and thank you. And congratulations to all your success and how much energy it goes into putting these on for your audience and your listeners and the value that you bring to them. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. And people ask, why do you do it? Right. And it's because I get to talk to the coolest people, and I learn something every single time. Even with, 920 plus episodes, I still learn something every single time. And so to me, that is why I do this. And if I learn, I'm hoping that my listeners and my viewers are learning also.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So
it's like the worst part.
I know.
It's like when people are like, I listen to these and I'm like, oh my God.
Well, and it's really funny because we're always like, wow, that sounds impressive. And I'm like, you sent me the bio.
I know. My team sent the bio, but yes.
Right. But it is the cool thing about bios is it does give us that chance to shine. And I think so many people don't take that opportunity. And so think about that, folks. What would your bio say if I was going to read it?
Awesome.
So Adam Hergenrother is an entrepreneur at heart. He is the founder and CEO of the thriving 1 billion, with a B, folks, $1 billion organization, Adam Hergenrother Companies, which includes several organizations ranging from a national real estate company to an award-winning development and construction company to leadership training. He is passionate about using business to transform lives and believes that when you focus on leading yourself first, the business results will follow. When he's not leading and growing his organizations or working on his inner growth, you can find Adam in the Vermont mountains with his wife, Sarah, and their 3 wonderful children, Sienna, Asher, and Madelyn. And what he didn't say in the bio is that he is the author of The 2000% Life, your guide to spiritual growth and business success without meditating on a mountaintop. And we're definitely going to be talking about that. But again, Adam, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Great. Well, I would love to learn more about you. And so tell us a little bit about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Yeah, that's a wonderful journey. And hopefully people hear this and realize that if I can do any of this, then anybody else can as well too. I grew up overweight. I used food as a way of kind of controlling emotions, how I would feel. I always try to be somebody that I wasn't. I was almost like a chameleon. So whatever somebody wanted me to be, I would try to do because I was very insecure. Then I was about a freshman in high school. At this point, I culminated to about 100 pounds overweight. I was in the recreational drugs and I was failing classes. And this is like 2 weeks into my freshman year. I remember coming home one day and, people ask a lot about that day. And, I don't know if it was as much about the day as much as just building up to that day. And it wasn't like a spiritual movement or some deep voice that I heard. It was just this, like, what am I doing in my life? Right. Like it was just something that that wanted to be itch that wasn't being scratched currently. So it's, I came home and I put Celine Dion on, which at the time was really popular. It was
right.
Just it was what it was. And I started, I would cry and then I would kind of like start visualizing what I want my life to look like. And that was really the first time I ever started some sort of like visualization at all. And I remember it was like midnight. My dad worked nights and he came in and he heard me crying and he was like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Just not happy with my life." And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, you have two choices. You can accept it or you can change it." And he
Right.
walked out of the room. And I was like,
Wise
"Well,
man.
that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
that's perfect." But it's funny. I think about my kids. If they had said that, I would have gone in there and sat with them and had a
Mm-hmm.
much larger
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But it was effective for him, so it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And the next year, he was right. I stopped hanging out with the people that I was hanging out with, which
Mm-hmm.
we could put a pin and come back to that, because for about 2 weeks they threatened me with guns, broke my
Mm-hmm.
windows. Like
Mm-hmm.
really what it was they didn't like anybody else breaking away from
Right.
them and making them feel like they
Mm-hmm.
were inadequate and
Mm-hmm.
insecure and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. So anyways, I got through that, and I ended up joining. I was actually playing football, and so I
Mm-hmm.
started into sports, which is part of our foundation. Really helps kids
Mm-hmm.
in sports, because that was
Right.
such an important part of my life
Mm-hmm.
of turning it around. I lost 100 pounds within a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's why physicality is also really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
It also gave me the confidence
Mm-hmm.
to be able to realize that I didn't need to live somebody else's life,
Mm-hmm.
and that I wanted to live my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say it like that back then, but when I look back at it, that's essentially what was happening. School, in high school and coming into college, I am not naturally book smart. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to work really hard to get
Okay.
really good grades in high school and into college. Um, as a freshman, I was into what's called the guaranteed admissions program for the state of Vermont. And I had to get a 3.0 or better in the first semester. I got like a 3.3. So I got
Mm-hmm.
into the program. But more importantly, I had this roommate who wasn't a roommate. He was just a friend that lived in college on the weekends. If anybody else has had somebody like that before,
Mm-hmm.
his father owned a car dealership,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working during college to kind of pay for things,
Mm-hmm.
and I had maybe $600-700 in my bank account,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, "Hey, if we each put $500 in, we can buy this vehicle and we can then fix it and sell it." So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay. So I gave him $500. He put $500 in. Like a week later, we each made $1,000, and
Wow.
that was
So you
really
doubled your income, your
doubled.
investment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, we more than
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we ended up getting $1,500 back. But anyway, so we
Oy.
made $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the first time in business that I learned really leverage, because I never saw the vehicle, I never did the work, I just put my money to work,
Yeah.
and so it
Okay.
really helped me
Mm-hmm.
start to orient myself in terms of what I wanted to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually, about 6 months later, we had probably amassed about $60,000 each in profit.
Whoa.
And I also learned the value of contracts, because at some point he goes like, "I don't need your money anymore. Like, you're not doing anything." So that was a valuable thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I took the money and I actually put it into real estate. So
Okay.
as at that point, it was like a sophomore in college coming into sophomore
Wow.
year. I bought a pre-construction condo, and you got to remember, this is
Mm-hmm.
2002. The
Mm-hmm.
market in real estate was nothing but climbing.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought one for like 150,000. Like
Mm-hmm.
a year later, they weren't even built, and they were selling for 175. I'm like, no wonder why everyone's in real estate. You just
Mm-hmm.
put some money in, and every year they just like
Right.
keep going up.
Look.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this is like the easiest thing in the world. I'm like, I got this whole thing figured out, right? And then of course, the market obviously shifted in
Yeah. Oops.
2006 just slightly. But the
Mm-hmm.
funny thing about this actually is I chose to rent that out, and
Mm-hmm.
I actually I had gotten a kind of a personal home loan, which in the association didn't want you renting it out more than a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
They actually realized that in early 2005, that I was renting it out, and in the company, they're no longer in existence because they went away in the mortgage crisis
Mm-hmm.
in 2007, but they called the note on me.
Ah.
So I actually had to sell or pay off the mortgage by December 31st, 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I didn't have the cash to do it. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, we're forced to sell. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember being so frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, the market's just increasing. Like, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to take this out. So anyways, we sold it, and we were the last sale in like mid-December. Right. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember two things that happened that were important. One is I wrote out a real estate commission check,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, wow, this is like the amount of money that I made like all year.
Right. And it's
What
going
it
to
was.
somebody else.
Yeah. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty good at sales. Maybe I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that was the highest unit that sold in there all the way till 2012. So
Wow.
sometimes, life feels like it's kind of grabbing us, but the
Mm-hmm.
reality was it actually was a gift that we
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sold that. And actually ended up taking the money and ended up buying more real estate from there, and actually
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to get into real estate for my life. Two more points and I'll pause, and we can kind of go back on any of these
Mm-hmm.
things. Kind of builds up to where I am. I when I got out of college, like many entrepreneurs, I went after it really hard. I bought
Mm-hmm.
into this idea that success was about getting enough power, money, fame, leverage,
Mm-hmm.
authority, titles that you could, so that ultimately, and this is how I've come to learn how to describe what people say of success,
Mm-hmm.
is that you get all of those things so that you can control the people, places, and things around
Mm-hmm.
you. So the
Right.
events unfold the way you want it to,
Mm-hmm.
so that your inner experience is the one that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it doesn't work. You end up spending a ton of time doing that. So anyways, I
Mm-hmm.
had a financial goal of $500,000 net income.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was about 27 years old, anywhere between 26, 27, I hit this $500,000 number. And I can remember it was towards the end of the year, and we were at a holiday party, and I was sharing this with my mom, who's the most unassuming person, and she could care less about money. And I was like, hey, I made $500,000 this year. And she was like, oh, that's great. Pass the ketchup.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, I realized that like she didn't care. And then I
Right.
asked a deeper question. I was like, well, do I even care?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really, to me, oriented myself into, well, what's the whole point of all that we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
If this isn't working, this isn't
Right.
turning me on like people said
Mm-hmm.
it was. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I actually feel worse now because I feel like I accomplished the goal and it didn't like,
And
I
mom
thought,
didn't care.
yeah, mom didn't care. And I thought somehow if I got $500,000,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be like a fruit tree outside
Right.
that was like filling me up with joy every
And we
day.
hear
And
this,
like, that's
whoa,
exactly
right?
that did not work. And so
Mm-hmm.
it really oriented my life to start looking at a different inwardly. And that's kind of where
Okay.
we came up with the 200% life,
Mm-hmm.
100% inner and 100% outer. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't come till years later. But it actually, once I started making this more about an infinite journey and kind
Mm-hmm.
of business as a conduit for your personal growth, I just started building organizations, and today we've got over 1,000 people and kind of built the different organizations in that 13-year period. But that's kind of the genesis of how I got in the business and kind of why we spend so much energy and time in a fresh look at leadership in terms of making sure that the man or woman or they are put together first before they go out there and try to venture off into building anything.
I love it. And oh my gosh, so much right there. Just like you said, to start going through. I mean, it's amazing, first of all, that in high school, you had the presence of mind to say, this is not working. Because obviously I think, especially in high school, for young boys or young girls, peer pressure is incredible. And it's kind of what our world revolves around. Now, and we'll come back to sports because I really want to talk about that, because I think sports is something that is a phenomenal outlet, even though I'm as klutzy as can be. But the fact that you had that presence of mind, and then in college, you weren't just coasting. I mean, everybody raise your hands. How many of us just kind of coasted through college and then went, oh, now what are we going to do? You already had those plans made. And I think that is just incredible. So why do you think that is? I mean, had your parents encouraged this? You said you weren't really into reading books and things. Why do you think you were like that?
Well, two things. One, I think there was enough suffering and pain my entire life that it led up to this point where I was like, I'd gotten to such a, you've heard people say it before, I don't even call it a low point, but just such like, I just took a step back from my life and I just looked at it holistically. And I'm like, actually, there was an event that occurred. I was hanging out with these kids that were just not good people. And there was a big fight that happened and the car got kicked in, windows got smashed. There was bats involved. Like people got beat up pretty bad. It was a really bad experience. And then after that moment, I went home and it was like 2 weeks later that I was like, dude, I'm not doing this anymore. Like what are
people could have died.
Yeah. It was like, I was like, I'm not. And the whole time, and I think people kind of know this, the whole time I knew this wasn't what I wanted to be doing, but like, I was, like you said, like you were just kind of caught in this peer pressure. And I was like, it was there. I also think that the reason why I kind of started focusing pretty heavily in high school and the college is because I actually got it out of my system. Like
you sowed your wild oats,
like I was
right?
honestly, I was like, I'm like, I've been there, done that. Like, it's like, I'm kind of through with that. Now, why, and the speed at which I went through there, I don't know. But for whatever reason, that just didn't excite me anymore. And it's not like I was perfect in high school or college from there on out.
You still had an adult beverage or two.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But kind of that part of me kind of seemed to have kind of checked the box, if you will. Though it's funny that you say that, because I remember some of my friends who their parents were so strict that they didn't do anything in high school. And like they were or trying to protect them so much.
Uh-huh.
At the minute they got to college,
Oh yeah.
it was just like, it was like a zoo. They had freedom. And my parents were going through a divorce, and they were amazing parents, but like they were having their own struggles during like that period of time. And I just had a lot of freedom. Right. So I just kind of did my thing, and I was like, okay, I've kind of checked this box, and now I want to go build something. I mean, that's really what it is. And so I knew at that point that, I wanted to prove to, well, you know, at the time it was very egoic. I wanted to prove to the world. I wanted to prove to my parents. I wanted to prove to myself, because, you know, your entire life up until like middle, you know, freshman, sophomore year in high school, I hadn't proved anything. In fact, I was always the opposite. So now I was like, this is my turn. Like, I want to go out there and do something. I actually think, and we can talk about sports later, but I ended up becoming captain of my football team. And that also, we won the state championship. So that really, and that's not something special. We live in Vermont, so there's more cows than people. So it's not like it's a big championship that we're
Texas
in.
Or
exactly.
Georgia.
That's exactly right. And so like, I actually remember thinking at some point, I was like, I think I'm going to play in the NFL. And like, I just remember that as like a junior going into a senior year, I was like, this is going to be amazing. And I'm going to play in the NFL. And I remember playing in like a New England championship game that they have for like all stars of the states. And I remember I played middle linebacker, and I tried to tackle this guy the first play, and instantaneously I was like, I'm not going to the NFL.
He just kind of flicked you off,
I
right?
was like, in fact, like I'm not even really going to play in college. Like, I think I could have like played at some D3 or D4 schools, but I wanted to focus more on finance. And actually at the time I thought for sure I was going to be on Wall Street, surprisingly enough. So I actually worked down there for a little while, and big into finance. But then at the time, I was really unemployable. There was not any, it's just anybody putting a box on my thinking or my limiting, of what I can do in my life. I think mainly because the first, 15, 16 years of my life, I'm just unemployable. And so I left, a really good job, in late 2005, early 2006 to go into real estate, which was the worst market that at the time had seen in, 100 years. And people thought I was crazy. They thought I was crazy. And I just put my head down and did what was required, and just didn't stop.
Right. And you got out of finance at a good time.
It's fun. I have buddies that were in there, and they kicked ass for 4 years, 5 years, and all of a sudden, like,
boom,
it's gone.
Right.
All their, not all their work's gone, but like, if they're promised certain positions, they were just eliminated, and they all went and did different things. And actually, one of my friends, I haven't spoken to him for a while. I remember he was really high up at a company there, and they just went away. But it worked really well for him, because he went and became like the 80th employee at Amazon. And he's still there today. And he's actually the smartest kid intellectually that I've ever met. Everyone's got one of those friends that like take like a bong hit and then go take like literally like, and go and take the hardest finance exam you've ever seen in a school. And I'd be like, what the hell is wrong?
Yeah. Never studied, never. Yeah. And, people like that, the truly, it's a gift to them. And in many cases, of course, what we see is then they have major issues. And
he does have major issues.
It's incredible. But, the other thing that struck me and reading your book, and it was funny because you talk about, the $500,000 with your mom. Yeah. And I love that in the book, you talked about the fact that, not only did you tell your mom that you made $500,000, you said it loud enough so that everybody else could hear. Exactly. And everybody was like, yeah.
Good for you. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of one of the things, we all start fairly young with defining what success is. And then we keep on that hamster wheel trying to get to it. I've shared this on the program before, that when long ago, when I had my 10th high school reunion. Now I went to, I went to a very small high school. We had 32 in my graduating class. And so I understand small schools, right? But, we were organizing the class reunion, and, as you do at class reunions, you give out awards. And one of the people who was organizing it said, well, we have to give out who's the most successful. And I looked at her and I said, and how is it that you're defining that?
Yeah, that's great.
And, and she, of course, there was one thing, money. And and then I remember asking her, and how do you know how much people make? I mean, that was the thing. But I told her, I said, I know how much some of my classmates make, and I also know how unhappy they are. And I said, and to me, the person who I think is the most successful is one of our classmates who has 4 kids, never went to college, but is, raising those 4 kids and having a great time. And so, of course, obviously, we did not give out that award, but it is something that we do kind of keep aiming for. And you talk about this in your book, is that we set those, especially monetary goals, and it's not just monetary, it's what are we going to buy with the money, and then we're not happy, because we get that Porsche, well then we want the Tesla, well then we want the, and I'm not a car person, so I about run out of all of those things that are bigger and better. We want the house on the hill, then we want the mansion, and all of those things. And it just doesn't make us happy. And so that's where you came up with the 200% life. And you talk a lot, so okay, first of all, define what the 200% is. You mentioned it, but give us a little bit more information on that.
Yeah. And I love where you're going with the question. We can jump in that after. The 200% life for me was just a model that I started teaching. I didn't call it that in 2011 and 12. I remember I had about 500 people in a room. And I just stopped one day, like halfway through the presentation. I was like, does anybody else have that voice inside your head? And gingerly, like 1 or 2 people raised their hand, and all of a sudden, like everyone else started raising their hand. And I ended up just talking about the experiences and what I was doing there. And it was a resounding, like a lot of people wanted to understand this conversation, because it's, the inner world's very etheric. It's not the physical world. So it's not like you can see it. It's not a plan. It's just, a wind can blow and you can be in one mood to the next instantaneously. So the 100% inner world, and the way the 200% life is described is that most people spend 99% of their life in the outer world, right? And they try to make the outer world their inner world. The reality is the 100% inner world, you have a voice that's in your head, right? You can make it say hello right now. You can make it think of an apple. Everyone can do that, right? You also have emotions, if you haven't noticed, right? And they are big brother, little sister with the mind and the emotions, right? So you have these emotions, and you have your spiritual heart. First of all, like one of the most important things to remember is that you are not the voice inside your head. You are the one that's experiencing the voice inside your head. That's kind of like the first awareness of that. You also not your emotions. They come and go. Every emotion you've ever experienced has come and probably come back and gone and come back in all different ways. The other funny thing too is like, we're all psychologists in our own way. Like if I ask somebody, like, tell me the difference between, can you experience the difference between frustration and irritation? They go, yes. What about jealousy? Yes. So great. You're in there experiencing this subtle change of how this inner experience is. And you can label it because you're in there experiencing it yourself, which is such a gift. And the spiritual heart is not your physical heart, right? It's like if something, really bad happens or whatever that is, like you can feel your heart drop. It's not like your physical heart drops, right? It's you cut the energy off to it. But the spiritual heart also gives life depth. And can you imagine what life would be like if you didn't have the depth of your heart to feel the lowest lows or feel the highest highs and everything in between? So that's the 100% inner world. That's your primary responsibility first, because really what people are doing is they're using the outer world to try to get their inner world to the experience that they want.
Buy more, get more, do more.
Yeah, exactly. Better. So the outer world is, people, places, and things, right? And people try to manipulate. Those are the roles that we play, the identities that we attach ourselves to, the things that we need to have, the goods that we are, the awards that we want to get, the names and hospitals that we want to have, whatever. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but that can't be your primary use to turn yourself on. So what we typically do, and what we're sold, is that if you go get that house, I'm going to go get it and I'm going to feel great. And by the way, what we end up doing with thinking is that we create a mini reel inside our heads about some future event that's going to occur. And we how our inner experience responds to it. If it responds in a good way, and we can explain why this all happens. If we respond in a good way, we go after that decision. If it doesn't feel good, we don't go after the decision. For again, if money didn't turn you on, people wouldn't go after it. There's plenty of cultures where money does not turn people on and they actually move away from it. Not in the United States necessarily, but in Eastern countries, in religions, there are places that literally renounce money. Like that's just what the thing is. And so it's never about renouncing wealth or money or fame or any of those things. It's just that you don't use that as a way to try to keep making your inner experience better. And so when I realized this early, in my my 20s, I was like, it just doesn't work. It's not wrong. This doesn't work. Every time I get something, it turns me on for a few minutes, and then instantaneously I'm on to trying to get something else. It's like every luxury item that you've ever wanted, once you got it, is no longer a luxury item. And then it just becomes. So it's just all of these things just keep showing up. And so what you do is, if you go and do the inner work first, then everything that you do in the outer world just becomes more playful. It doesn't mean it goes the way you want it to. It just becomes more enjoyable. That's part of it, is people are taking themselves way too serious in life for something you're going to be here for such a quick period of time.
Right.
That's the essence of the 200% life.
Right. And you're not saying that we shouldn't want those things. It's still okay to say, I want a nice car. I want to be able to go on great vacations. I want to be able to buy things for my family and friends. That's okay. But it has to kind of match what your inner soul is saying, your inner heart.
Well, you know what it really is? It's like, you can say, like, why do you want the car? So, or the nice vacations? Because if you go, I want the car so that I can turn me on, because so other people can see it, so that I get this inner experience. It's not going to last. It's, macroeconomics has one of the most powerful spiritual terms. It's called the law of diminishing returns. And every time you experience something more, it loses its value.
The luster is gone more quickly.
Exactly. So if you want the car because you love the car and it's there, you're not trying to post it on social media or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So the world, you don't need people to approve you for more. They enjoy the car way more, or you enjoy the vacation way more. So it's never about not enjoying the fruits of things that are out there. It's just not enjoying them to try to get you to be turned on inside constantly, because that never works. And that's where people fall short, is like that's why they have this insatiable appetite for wanting more and more things. And that could be people listening and say, well, I don't want things. They could say, well, it's titles. And then if it's not titles, then it's, I want to be known as a better parent. If it's not being a parent, it's like, I want to be known in my community for something that I do. Right. So it can change shape to what it is. But it's really, it's spirituality is never changing what you're doing. It's about changing the part of you that is interacting with what you're doing, so that you can freely interact with it and enjoy whether it becomes a challenge or enjoy whether it becomes a fruit. It's just a wonderful way to live your life.
Right. It's interesting. I'm here in Atlanta, and a week or so ago, we had the services for Rosalynn Carter. Now, when Jimmy Carter was president, I was in high school. Okay. So everybody can now figure out how old I am. But, and obviously living here in Atlanta, you kind of know a bit about what's going on with the Carters and the Habitat for Humanity homes and all of those things. But one of the comments that somebody made was, look at what he did after he was president.
Yeah.
Moved back to Plains. I think the population is like 600-700, to the house that they'd always lived in. And every other president, many cases before and after, went to the big mansions, went to all of these large things, and made the huge speaker fees, all of those. Now that's, again, was that important to them? We don't know. But, he and the thing that they obviously kept talking a lot about with both of the Carters was that they lived the servant life. And to them, that was what fed their soul. Now to, somebody else, like you said, it could be that, the big apartments and the multi-million-dollar speaking fees, that feeds their soul. But, it was just, I was struck a lot with what they said about the Carters, in the last couple of weeks, because they did, they had that 100%, they knew what that was, and they followed that, and they followed that to every single thing they did.
Yeah, it's they're remarkable human beings. And it's never about what you're doing. It's just the why are you, what's the intention behind what you're doing? And again, most people's intention is that they're somehow going to, it's just an indirect way of trying to get it. Remember, anything anybody ever does outside is trying to get their inner experience the way they want it.
Right.
And that's why, but if you go and you work on your inner experience first, and you don't need the outside to be a certain way. You're free to live your life. And you are free. Like there's an interesting study that came out that talked about how they studied, I don't know, thousands of individuals that were musicians trying to make a living that way. And they were measuring their kind of joy or their happiness. And it was very little because they were just trying to make it an effort to do this. And then they went to a couple different communities where people were doing and singing for free and playing their music and their gifts for and the amount of joy they had. And time that they just dedicated to it was a lot, but they just had so much more free expression, whether it was a community, it was a church, it was a religion, or whether it's singing with your friends, or you're creating your own little band and you're doing it and trying to give your CDs away. They measured that. And so it's like, the majority of, it's like we struggle so much to try to turn that instead of just allowing ourselves to just, express ourselves in that wonderful way.
Right. Yes. It's kind of like, Simon Sinek says, we have to know what our why is. And why are we doing what it is that we're doing? And obviously I talk on the program a lot about leadership. And what I love about what you talk about is when you do this for yourself, it is going to make you a better leader. And because you're going to encourage everybody that works with you, 1,000 employees, to be doing this themselves. So talk a little bit more about that. How does this move throughout your business? Because it's, sometimes people think, well, it's one or the other, and it's not.
Yeah. I'll jump into leadership. It's one of the reasons why we had the subtitle of the book, spiritual growth and business success without meditating on a mountaintop.
Yeah.
Part of that, I had concept that if I wanted to go, work, you call it personal growth or spirituality. It's just words, just working on your inner experience.
Right.
That I somehow had to live in the Himalayas, reciting haikus next to a fire, sitting Indian style. And it's not even comfortable to sit that way. I was like, I don't even that's not what I want to do. So, that's why, it's not about that. It's actually, one of the things that Eckhart Tolle says all the time, where he's like, the number one question I get is, why are you in Starbucks? And people, because he drinks Starbucks every day. And they're like, you are a spiritual person and a teacher. You shouldn't be in Starbucks. And
you're spending $9 for a cup of coffee.
Yes, exactly. And he's like, I like Starbucks. So it's like, it's nothing about how somebody's necessarily showing up. It's about their state of which they are. To me, leadership, people think about leadership in an abstract way. I believe leadership is a verb. It's an action-oriented item. Leadership is about getting others to take a new action that benefits them in the organization, assuming we're talking about a business context.
Right.
Self-leadership always precedes leadership. Now, leadership's work product are decisions. That's what you do, right? If you're a leader, what your work product actually is making higher quality decisions than the next company. To me, organizations that make better quality decisions from every level of leadership every single day are the ones that don't become marginally successful, but become extraordinarily successful because of their decision-making abilities.
Right.
So then I just work backwards from there and saying, well, if that's my work product, then how do I put myself in a situation so I'm making the highest quality decisions? And I think anybody would agree that if you are feeling extraordinarily high or feeling extraordinarily low, you make a decision based on that part of what you're feeling. So for instance, if you get an email, which probably people have today, if they're listening, they're listening to this, that they just see the sender sending the email and all of a sudden they're disturbed, right? They see the email,
they just see the name and they're like,
and they're just boom, and they're instantly disturbed. Now they're angry or irritated or frustrated or whatever it is. And so now all of a sudden you start replying back to this individual, and you may have worked on yourself and maybe you erased one sentence that you took out of there. But the next day you come back and you read it and you're more clear and you're centered and you're not responding.
You're like, oh, oops.
Yeah. And you go, why did I send that? Why would I do that? Well, it's because you're responding. It's not about what you're doing. It's the part of you that's doing it. So you're responding from that level of kind of emotion that you're doing. You're actually expressing the emotion instead of just feeling the emotion and then letting it pass and then acting. So we teach something in our organization called relax, release, and act. And what that really but when the minute you feel like the force is disturbed or look, I don't know how else to explain it. It's like you're in there fine. The next thing you know, you're not okay, right? You're pissed, frustrated. Something
it's a negative, not a positive.
Yes. Well, honestly, even on the positive side, I saw a lot of organizations in 2022 make decisions because they thought money was going to continue to come in forever. And so they made poor decisions because they were
Right.
so high on things that, again, either way, they were making a decision based on an external event that was causing a disturbance in
Right.
them one way or another, right? Instead of being centered and clear. So, and now they're trying to reel back from these decisions that they made because now their company's in financial situations that are not necessarily a positive one. So so once you release, so the RR and A, which is first I relax. The first thing that I do when I'm disturbed, the first thing that you do is just
Breathe.
breath, 3, 2, 1, relax. Sometimes we teach like drop your shoulders, just relax. The second thing is now release the energy. So so you're not storing it and it's no longer allowing you. Remember, if you're touching anger, everything you say or do is going to be some level of anger with it, right? So if you release, and by the way, it's very painful to release. This is the real personal growth work, is when something disturbs you, you sit there and you allow it to work its way through you. And as it works its way through you, and there's plenty of techniques that are out there, but you work its way through you. Now you're back to a centered state, and then you act.
Right.
Then you make the decision. Then you deal with the situation. You know, the word surrender is thrown around out there. Surrender is not passivity at all.
Right.
You know, to me, I actually think you become a major, fierce business competitor the minute you can deploy something like this, because you're no longer making decisions out of anything other than what's best for the organization. For your people and for the situation at hand. Most people are making a decision that's trying to get this inner state to feel better. And so it's a personal or egoic decision. It doesn't mean that bravado as an ego standpoint. It just means I'm not feeling okay. And the way I'm going to feel better is if I respond this way, or that you do this for me. Right.
Right. I'm going to make you do it.
Yes. Or whatever it is. Right. You know, most people walk into a meeting, you know, they may listen to everybody, but really they already have an agenda. They already know what they want to say, or they're hurt if their feelings aren't there. Versus like, if you just go in there and you're just looking for the best solutions, you become open to people, you become curious about people's thoughts. And that's how organizations collectively come to make better decisions as a whole, which then transforms your organization.
Right. You know, and I love that you say that we have to actually acknowledge those emotions. Because I think that's one of the other things is we think, well, I shouldn't be angry about this, or I shouldn't be hurt about it, or, you know, oh, I shouldn't feel good that we made this record-setting profit.
Yes.
You know, no, we need to feel those emotions and acknowledge them. And as you said, then let them pass through us.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of saying that. I mean, that's exactly right. It's never about not pretending that you don't feel that way. If all of a sudden you're sitting, I'll give you an example the other day. I was sitting there and like my wife was eating a chip and it was just irritating me just from her eating a chip.
I see. I don't like the noise either.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a crunch. And I'm like, how can somebody eat a chip so loud? Right. I'm just sitting there. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with her. We're both reading a book. Like she's doing her thing. And I'm like, now I'm irritated. I'm like, I stood up and I was like, I have to leave the room because I'm being irritated by the fact
by
that
a chip.
But like, and I know how ridiculous that is, but my wife gets me at this point. Cause
see, and that's me too. I'm like, oh my God, how can,
Yeah. And so I leave and I come back and she's like, you good? I'm like, good. Like, but that's the point. Cause that way you can use a relationship to work on each other, but it's again, so it's not like I wanted that to come in. I just started experiencing this irritation. And instead of responding from it and yelling at her for something like, can you chew a little less? And like, that's just polluting the world now.
Right.
And so if you can release that, and again, whatever technique you have to do, you have to go run, push-ups, meditate, listen to music, like, you know, whatever, there's 1,000 different ways that you can help release that energy so that then it passes. Remember, think about you being like a sojourner in life. A sojourner is like the quality of the mist of themselves just moving through, just like like the sky allows the clouds to come in, and then it allows the sun to hit, and then it allows lightning bolts, and it allows rain, and it allows snow, but the sky itself stays centered. And that's the same. You are in there experiencing all the different type of emotions. You're experiencing your spiritual heart. You're experiencing the voice talk forever and try to get you to take action on it. It's not you. It's just things that are happening that are objects of consciousness that are triggering these things. And so then you release and you just become centered so that you can actually look at the situation. Here's the other thing on leadership, right? If you're a leader and it's again, to me, the 200% life, spirituality, personal growth is just about handling reality. It's like the simplest way I
Mhm.
can say it, just handling reality. Because if you're a doctor and you can't handle the sight of blood, you're no good at the situation.
You're not going to be a
You're
doctor for
not.
very long, right? Or
No.
you're going to have to change,
Whatever it
practices.
is that
Mhm.
you're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or, if you are a leader and you can't handle a lawsuit, or you can't
Mhm.
handle an employee leaving,
Right.
or you can't handle somebody talking negatively
Mhm.
about you, then you're not going to be an effective leader.
Mhm.
If you're a
Right.
parent and you can't handle your kids
Mhm.
screaming at a grocery store, you're no good at the situation.
Mhm.
So the growth that happens
Mhm.
is that as you can relax and release, you're actually able to handle the situation in a
Mhm.
much more positive way. That then again, it doesn't mean it's the way you
Mhm.
want it. It doesn't mean life's going to go the way it is. It
Right.
doesn't, you're not going to be triggered by things. It
Mhm.
just means I can stop, I can pause, I
Mhm.
can relax, and then I can handle. That's why I
Mhm.
always say relax, release, and act.
Mhm.
And then the acting has to come after you've relaxed and released.
Mhm.
You're actually able to make the higher, better decisions in
Right.
any aspect of your life.
Right. Well, and sometimes the acting is actually to do nothing.
Absolutely.
And I
Only
think
time
that's,
it is.
yeah.
That's
Oh
exactly.
yeah. I'm not going to send that email.
Yep.
I'm not going to go, kick the dog.
Yep. Exactly right.
I'm not going to buy that really fancy car. I mean,
Exactly.
we're choosing the not option. It's kind of like, in my leadership groups, one of the things we talk about is, you know, um, no is a full sentence. Hey, Adam, I really, really, really think you'd be great working on this project. And you can say no and not give any explanation. I mean, and that's the other thing is we always want no, but yeah, no. No is the full sentence, and we don't owe anybody the rest of the as long as it's true to ourselves.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, you don't, and part of the gift of when you bring this in there is you just start being a blessing for other people. I know it's kind
Mhm.
of whether you're in leadership, because look, what's the point of building a business
Right.
if you're not using it as a way to produce a good for
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
environment, a good for the world, but
Mhm.
also at the same time, you're helping people
Mhm.
do the deeper work. That's why I
Mhm.
always say business is a conduit for your personal
Mhm.
growth. And that's how I've always approached it, is
Right.
because nobody would sign up for lawsuits, or nobody would
Mhm.
sign up for
Right. Mhm.
like a coup in your company or whatever it
Mhm.
is that you're doing. All the things that happen, by the way,
Mhm.
in the organization when you're
Mhm.
building things, and they become challenges. But
Mhm.
just look at them as if, you're just here experiencing this for, and
Mhm.
look, I mean, we're all going to die in a very short
Mhm.
period of time, right? We just are.
Mhm.
And the more that we can recognize that, the less we just take our, like, each moment so seriously.
Mhm.
Yesterday, um, I was teaching this course called Quantum Leap. It's one of
Mhm.
I teach it once a year. I love giving back. It's all about quantum is actually a small yet explosive, significant change.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how, we think about things, is like in your life, how do you make these small but major changes in your
Mhm.
life? For instance, right? If all of a sudden you get up half an hour earlier and you start to exercise, or you meditate, or you
Mhm.
journal, or you prayer, or you're reading your Bible, or whatever
Mhm.
it is that you're doing that works on you,
Mhm.
that allows you to be able to go out there and contribute more. That's a small shift in your
Mhm.
day, but have massive impact on everything else that you
Right.
do throughout the day.
Mhm. Right. And again, it could be, not doing something. You made that decision when you were a freshman in high school to say, I'm not going to be with those people
Yeah,
anymore.
that's exactly right.
And you mentioned, I mean, they threatened you.
Yeah.
It would, because it made them, it reflected badly on them that you wanted to leave. And but yeah, and then to actually have the courage to go ahead and say, yeah, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. The path becomes very undisguised
Mhm.
once you pause
Mhm.
and reflect.
Right.
And that's part of, I don't think there's a leader out there that wouldn't want more clarity in their life
Mhm.
to help make better decisions in
Mhm.
their life. And so again, I believe the most important work that a leader can
Mhm.
do is on themselves to
Mhm.
make better decisions on behalf of the
Mhm.
organization.
Right.
And that's the root of the work.
Mhm.
And sure, then there's individual tactics and how to write up a GPS or a 135 or an annual plan, or how
Mhm.
to work through budget, but just everything becomes, and I wouldn't say easier, it just becomes
Mhm.
lighter, it becomes
Mhm.
clearer. Just like if you were to show up at an airport that you have no idea what city you're in, you're trying to
Mhm.
find the hotel without your phone and you're
Mhm.
driving, like, think how much stress that would be.
Mhm.
The beauty about when you're actually able to be calm and clear,
Mhm.
vision, which is the most
Mhm.
important thing, I think a leader can do
Mhm.
in terms of like their work product and decisions. There's three other things a leader needs to do every day, right? It's vision. Where
Mhm.
is the organization going?
Right.
and make sure that all of your leaders know the vision.
Mhm.
Number two, it's making sure that your people have clarity, right,
Mhm.
on in terms of what they need to do,
Mhm.
which is also helps in decisions. And then three, it's understanding what are your key metrics that you need to look at every single day.
Mhm.
And that can be a range of like 1 to 4 metrics that that
Mhm.
organization needs to measure. And
Mhm.
that needs to be the key focus, that
Mhm.
everybody in the organization understands what those
Mhm.
numbers look like and what they do.
Right. And more than that, and it gets confusing. I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing is we have people who say, well, you're going to do these 100 things today. And what that does is, or 10, right? You're going, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
But if you've got just that small number, sure. It's just like, when we're at home and we're going, I need to do this, this, and this, right? Clean the toilet, vacuum, make the beds. If my list had 20 things on it, what I'm going to sit down and watch TV,
Yes, that's
because
exactly
my
right.
brain goes, no, I don't know what to do. And so I love this. And the other thing we talk about a lot on the program is the fact that leaders aren't necessarily those people with those titles. What you really want in a lot of organizations is for everybody in some way to be a leader. And which I think that's threatening to a lot of people because leader and title for them is tied together. But yeah, you want the people to be able to say, hey, Adam, have you thought about this? Or even just to take the initiative. You've empowered them enough that they can do things. To me, that that's what leadership can come in so many different variations.
Yeah. Well, certainly titles help from like a managerial
Right.
and
And we're
hierarchy.
never getting rid of org charts.
Yeah, just kind of like from a reporting standpoint, because you want to make sure that each leader has like 3 or
Mhm.
5 direct reports, and
Right.
anything more than that, it's
Mhm.
hard to pour into them.
Mhm.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, look, everybody is a leader at some level.
Mhm.
So at some meeting, most people are no longer
Mhm.
leaders. So they
Right.
may be leading a division, but then all of a sudden they get
Mhm.
in with the CEO, and no,
Mhm.
they're a leader, but they're now
Mhm.
being led by somebody
Mhm.
else. If the
Right.
CEO is there, they may be being led by a board,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
there's the board maybe being led by a group of
Mhm.
investors, right? So like there's always, you're always leading something. The other thing is, if
Mhm.
you're an employee, you may be leading your family, you're
Right.
leading a
Mhm.
client, you're leading the organization to something.
Mhm.
Every leadership is everywhere, right?
Mhm.
And there's leadership titles, but
Mhm.
leadership is prevalent throughout, should be prevalent for the
Mhm.
whole organization.
Right.
Now, there's a mechanical nature to leading others versus leadership.
Mhm.
Leading others, because there are a lot of people in our organization that love being individual contributors, and they
Mhm.
don't actually want to lead people,
Mhm.
but they are leaders, if that
Mhm.
makes a distinction for
Right.
people. That's why we use the word individual contributors,
Mhm.
who don't want to go down a leadership path,
Mhm.
but they have an individual contributor path where they can go out there and achieve growth. Because
Mhm. Mhm.
people in organizations think that if I'm not going to want to be a leader, then how do I advance my career? How do I
Mhm.
make more money? And
Mhm.
it's like, well, being a leader and leading other people are two different things.
Mhm.
There again, you have to first have self-leadership.
Mhm.
So, and that always precedes leadership.
Mhm.
And so if you're running a company, you may try to identify who are your individual contributors, but then how do you
Mhm.
work with them on being self-leadership,
Mhm.
which then shows up to doing it.
Mhm.
I used this example yesterday. It's like, a leader, being a leader can mean that you hold the door open for somebody at a gas station
Mhm.
because you've changed their day. Like,
Right.
stop trying to
Mhm.
think that leadership is
Mhm.
some corner office that has to have a
Mhm.
7-figure salary attached to it. No, you're a leader every single moment that you
Mhm.
put a smile on your face to help lead somebody to a different
Mhm.
path.
Right. And let's be honest, we do in many cases need that ultimate authority person because
Well,
decisions need made.
that's
It can't be because if we're doing the consensus thing, you might never reach a consensus. And I mean, there is something to the buck stops here statement. At some point, somebody has to say yes, no, whatever. But yeah, you can get all this input from others, and it, it, I think the thing that people need to remember is it's not diminishing yourself to have other people have this, and I think that's the thing.
two things. The majority of decisions that I get to make today are
Mhm.
worse and worser. right? Like, so like any other decision that comes in there, my leadership team will handle because they're easier decisions. The decisions that actually come to the owner or CEO or
they're the ones you don't really like.
They're the ones that nobody wants to touch, right? Because they have massive impacts on what they are. And there has to be somebody to making those decisions. You're absolutely spot on for that. I had another point on the so they're making a decision. What was the other thing that you said though? You said something on about you struck a good chord and it was important.
The buck stops here. You know, I don't know. I was rambling.
No, I know it was good. It was for making decisions on there, but there was anyways, it'll come back to
we
me.
Can't do consensus. You know, it's
yeah. I mean, it's there's one thing to hear consensus, but again, somebody's got to make this. There's another point. It'll come to me and it's gonna be perfect.
Right.
So
it'll come back.
Exactly.
Well, you know, we've only got about 10 minutes left. And so I want to talk about something that you have done that I think is phenomenal. And you know, you mentioned it just in one sentence. And then of course I had to go look it up real quick. The Hergenrother Foundation. You know, and a little bit about sports and stuff. You know, sports, like I said, I'm a klutz. Now, my parents firmly believed I should be in sports. I should learn teamwork. I did a lot of bench sitting, right? Or falling down, or, you know, all those various things. But it did teach me teamwork and things. And I'm a big college sports fan. My alma mater is the University of Colorado. And we have a fancy new shiny football coach, right? And one of the things that has impressed me with Deion Sanders is, you know, he is his entire philosophy about building young men. Yeah, it's great to win football games, but that's not why we're here. You know, and which, you know, donors don't always like to hear things like that. We're not bowl eligible, boo. But we haven't been for a while, so it's not like things have changed. But it really is about building those foundations in our youth and going forward. And so tell us more about the Hergenrother Foundation.
Yeah, you know, I would just hate to have individual kids not play sports because they can't afford a glove or they can't afford the cleats or a backpack, or they feel embarrassed about not showing up with the right apparel or you know, lacrosse gear. And so it's really important for us to be able to provide to that. We're actually building an indoor turf facility for our area so that people can come in there and we Vermont, obviously it's winter a lot, so we can actually utilize.
Yeah, you got to have an indoor facility.
Yeah, and I love coaching. You know, I coach for all three of my kids, and I coach soccer, lacrosse. I help out ski racing, like anything that we in soccer. I already said that, but like anything that we're doing that's out there, I try to be engaged with them. And you're right, winning is wonderful. You know, you go into sports and there's obviously a clear winner and a loser, and you understand that. Business, though, everyone can. We use this kind of ethos, which is win-win or no deal, because in business there doesn't have to be a loser, right? And I think that's a big difference between sports and business. Is in sports there is a winner and a loser, and everyone understands those rules. In business, it should be win-win. Nobody needs to lose on a transaction ever, or a client or an employee relationship with it. Nobody needs to lose. So it's all about win-win or no deal. That's kind of one of our ethos. But going back to sports, I mean, it gave me such tremendous kind of confidence in my life to grab things that you can see. As you know, my kids are 11, 9, and 7, and I've been coaching them for years. So watching these kids grow into young men, young women, who they are, and seeing how they develop their skills and their physical bodies get built out, and also dealing with the drama that happens from there, or the challenges that happen. You get to basically, here's life, here's scenes, they happen, and you get to work through them exactly kind of what Deion Sanders says, is kind of building young men. And you get to instill a lot of values in kids, and hard work ethic, you know, teamwork, and also failure, what that means. I mean, people do not teach.
Somebody
failure.
has to lose, like you said. You know, the participation trophies always perplexed me.
they do. Well, the thing is, in business, I actually think that I mean, business building is surviving your mistakes every day. I mean, it's preventing yourself from getting too much into the larger expenses mistakes that bankrupt you, and it's literally about how much can you fail, and how often, and how small.
Right.
And that's always the thing, because the more you can fail, the more you can learn, the more you can grow from that, the more you can constantly iterate, and then kind of continue to build from there.
Right. You know, and to me, it's not just sports. It's anything, you know, band, choir, theater, all of those things where you are having to come together And I think that was probably one of the hardest things during COVID, was that kids could not do that. And I think, things really suffered, but it is about, how are you going from those and learning to go forward? And I think it's just phenomenal. Well, oh my gosh, Adam, we've only got about 5 minutes left. This has been fascinating. We have to chat again, because I think we just scratched the surface. I didn't even get through all my notes. All my notes here. I didn't even get through all of them. And so I'd love to talk with you again, but tell us, how do people find you? Let me hold up the book again. The 2000% Life, Your Guide to Spiritual Growth and Business Success Without Meditating on a Mountaintop. We'll obviously have the link to that in the show notes. But how do people find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Sure. You can go to adamhergenrother.com. You can find our podcast, our books. There's another book called The Founder and Force Multiplier. That's the relationship between a strategic, partner. We call it EAs, chief of staffs, right? In the founder or the visionary, from there. And then of course the 200% Life as well too. That's there in our podcast. We have a bunch of free downloads and trainings, and you can see our,
lots of good resources
that's on there. And that would be the place to go.
I loved it. You had this smartphone backgrounds. And I thought that was so cute that you've got the one that say, "We all die."
Yes, exactly right. That's exactly right.
I might have to change out my Ralphie CU mascot one to that. I mean, I thought that was great. But we're flip about that, but it is true. It is kind of, what is your legacy going to be? And do you want it to be one where you were giving, and all of these various things? How did you define success? Things like that.
Yeah, I actually even think it's not a popular answer, but I think even legacies are a little bit of kind of overhyped. The reality is that the only reason why people fear death is because they think that death takes something away from them. They still think that life owes them some special experience or the depth of the experience that they're looking for. The reality is once you come to understand that you are going to die, and I think about it 30 to 40 times a day, not in a morbid way, just as a reminder of the fragility of life, and how easy we can get caught up in things. And then, we work all day, and then our families get our leftover energy, which is not the way. I have this little
should be the other way around.
Yeah, business never has a right to dumb up my inner state. And so I always make sure that's happening before I go into whether I'm talking to my friends or family or anything, because it's just not right. It's just, it's something that you're doing while you're here. The reality is every society that's ever been there has always been looked on and been like, wow, why would they do that? At some point they will look back and go, do you remember those Americans? Whether it's 500 years down the road, 1,000 years down the road. So what your legacy, people spend all this time trying to leave a legacy. Why don't you do the deep inner work, and the legacy actually just appears from that. It becomes, and you just become this individual that is helping move all of humanity in a way that's positive. But death can be a powerful motivator for people, just to kind of get and ask the deeper. All I would care about that is why am I here? Who am I? Right. Those are the deeper. I don't mean the roles that you play. I don't mean that you're a CEO or you're a parent or you're a son. I mean, who are you? Right. And then you answer those deeper questions. Life becomes a lot less difficult for people.
I love it. So much fun. Well, Adam, I really have had, just a delightful conversation with you, and would love to continue it. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I really think if people gain some perspective and stop taking themselves so serious in life, and I don't want to say just have more fun, just realizing that everything that you thought was a problem at some point is no longer a problem. At some point, every problem you have will no longer be a problem. And so we get so caught up in these identities and these roles that we play that it prevents us from actually enjoying the depth of the experience. For example, I would even ask in the last hour that they listened to you and I talk, did you actually listen to it? Or did you listen to the mind narrate the conversation of being like, I like what Adam said. I don't really like what Adam said. I love what Deb said, but Deb should have asked a different question, Adam, right? And most people are spending so much time trying to narrate the world instead of experience the world. It's like reading the menu instead of eating the meal. It's like, how do you describe an orange if you've never tasted one? And this is why people have so much anxiety in their lives, is because they're not really truly experiencing life. You're experiencing the mind narrate it. And so the gift would be is the deeper the work that you do, the more experience you have in life, the lighter you become, the easier life is. I mean, look, it is Disney World out there. They're talking about turtleback rocks on Mars and they're getting excited. And it's a rock that looks like a turtle. I mean, you go outside around here and there is nothing but just people in different shapes and colors. And some people talk to you low and some people yell at you. And it's funny. Like, it's just there. And you just get to experience the totality of you being here, witnessing this unfolding that's in front of you. And that's the greatest gift that you can have, is the true experience of life.
Oh my gosh, such wonderful wisdom. Well, I'm Deb Creer. This has been so much fun talking with Adam Hergenrother. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.